Hello dear viewers. Today we are going to discuss the Hartog Committee Report 1929. Before going through this topic, let's have a look on its objectives. Number 1. Historical background of Hartog Committee. Number 2. The recommendations of the Hartog Committee in different aspects of education. Number 3. Impact of Hartog Committee in the field of Indian education. In this unit, we will first discuss the historical background of setting up of the Hartog Committee in 1929. The First World War, 1914, had brought some significant changes in the British policy of administration in India. In 1917, Edwin Montagu, the Secretary of the State for India, had announced in the British Parliament that the goal of the British policy is the progressive realization of responsible governance in India. This has created an impression in the minds of the nationalist leaders, and that the British government was willing to give the power of self-administration to Indian people. But when the war came to an end, the British government did not keep their promise. This offended the Indian people, and new political unrest was imminent. In order to meet the situation, the government passed the Government Act in 1919, created a diarchy in the provincial administration. This act is also known as Montfort Reform Act. The Montfort Reform introduced the diarchy in the field of education as well. The central government had made the state administrators completely responsible for the education in spite of very limited resources at their disposal. It was impossible for them to spend sufficient money for the progress of education. Now, we are familiar with the historical background. Let us discuss the formation of Simon Commission and the appointment of Hartog Committee. By responding to the dissatisfaction felt by the Indian people about the Government of India Act of 1919. The Simon Commission was appointed on November 8, 1927, to inquire into the working of the administration under the Government of India Act 1919. About this time, as agitation against the government was going on, it was felt necessary to give due importance to education in India. The government therefore authorized the commission to appoint a committee to help in preparing a report on education. So the commission appointed a committee under the chairmanship of Sir Philip Hartog, born in London, to inquire into the conditions of education in India. Sir Philip Hartog had served as a member of Sadler Commission. He had also been a vice-chancellor of the Dhaka University in 1921. Since he was the chairman of the committee also known as Hartog Committee. Hartog Committee was appointed to inquire the organization of various aspects of education in India and to give it suggestions for its overall importance and progress. Hartog Committee Report 1929. The Commission studied the various aspects of education and submitted its report to the British government in 1929. It put forward comprehensive recommendations in regard to various facets of the education in India. First, the committee made some general observations regarding the state of education in India. The committee observed that there was considerable progress made in education by the time. Increasing enrollment in primary school indicates that the sense of indifference to education was breaking down, and the social and political consciousness among the people had also increased. With these ideas in view, the committee presented a comprehensive report. It made recommendations in regard to primary, secondary, higher, and some other aspects of education. First of all, we will discuss the recommendations of the Hartog report regarding primary education. Hartog Committee made a thorough study of the primary education in India. Committee decided to give special attention to the problems of primary education. It realized that the progress of primary education had not been satisfactory. Therefore, before making the recommendations, the committee pointed out the major defects of the existing system of primary education. To begin with, the committee pointed out that there were special difficulties that hindered the process of primary education in India, and these were: Number 1. Primary education in India is essentially a rural problem, as 87% of the population lives in villages. The committee realized that the majority of Indian population reside in villages. Hence, primary education is more a rural problem than the urban one. In rural areas, school units are usually small. Educate staffing is more expensive. The conditions of living are not attractive to teachers. Needs for supervision and inspection is much greater, and it is more difficult to secure regular and prolonged attendance of children. Number 2, low density of population. The villages are scattered. Roads and means of communication are very bad. Physical and climatic conditions were also not favorable for education. Number 3, poverty, illiteracy, and conservatism of average parents. The committee found that the villagers were poor, illiterate, and conservative, and unwilling to send their children to schools. The general economic condition of the villagers were also unfavorable to spread of mass education. Number 4, irregularity of attendance. As villages did not have hygienic conditions, epidemic often outbroke which affected the regularity of attendance of the children. Besides, agriculture work was also responsible for poor attendance. Children had to help their parents in agriculture, and the parents found that if they sent their children to schools, their work would suffer. Number 5, existence of large tracts of backward areas. The committee observes that there were many inaccessible and economically backward areas where primary education had not been encouraged. Number 6, difficulties created by barriers of caste and by the religion, communal and linguistic differences. The committee also found very serious barriers of caste, religion, and communal feelings, making the expansion of primary education complicated. Number 7, the committee then drew attention to the rapid growth in the number of primary schools and the pupil attending them, but came to the conclusion that the position was not as rosy as the figures would lead one to infer. The committee found that there was a good deal of waste in the system. Another big challenge found by the committee on primary level is wastage and stagnation. According to the committee, wastage meant premature withdrawal of children from school at any stage before the completion of primary course. By the stagnation, the committee meant detention in the same classes for more than one academic year. Regular promotions of the students to the next higher class is interrupted, resulting in the withdrawal of students from school learning. After describing the defects of primary education, Hartog committee condemned the policy of its hasty expansion and recommended concentration on consolidation and quality to improvement. Recommendations for the improvement of primary education. The recommendations made by the committee for the improvement of primary education are: Number 1, planning to make primary education compulsory. Primary education can be made compulsory, but there should be no hurry about it. Environment and circumstances of the locality should be carefully studied while making the education compulsory. Number 2, quality development. Policy of consolidation should be adopted and haphazard expansion should be dropped. Qualitative development should be made instead of increasing the number of primary schools. Number 3, duration. The minimum duration of the primary course should be of 4 years. Number 4, timetable. The timetable of the school should be drawn up in accordance with the environment and the circumstances of the schools. Number 5, curriculum. The curriculum of the primary school should be liberalized. It should be based on the needs and conditions of village life. Number 6, standard of teachers. Standard of the primary teachers should be improved. Training institutions should have better equipments and efficient staff. Number 7, reduction of wastage and stagnation. Special attention should be given to the lowest class in the primary schools. and determined effort should be made to reduce the large extent of stagnation and wastage that prevail therein. Number 8. Government inspection. The inspecting staff of the government should be considerably strengthened, both in quality and quantity. Recommendations on secondary education. First, we shall discuss the defects of secondary education as pointed out by the committee, and then we shall proceed to the recommendations regarding its improvement. Defects of secondary education. Number 1. Examination oriented. The committee found that the whole system of secondary education was dominated by the matriculation examination, and the ideal of every boy who entered a secondary school was to prepare himself for the university examination. It had no other purpose before it. Number 2. Failures. The percentage of failures at the matriculation examination was very large. This involved the wastage of time, efforts, and money of people. This was mainly due to the lack of promotions in the secondary schools from class to class and the absence of reasonable selective system. The recommendations made by the committee in order to remove the defects of the system of secondary education are as: Number 1. Diverting pupils to non-literacy pursuits. With a view to reducing the domination of the matriculation examination, the committee recommended the introduction of a more diversified curriculum in the middle vernacular schools, the diversion of more boys to industrial and commercial careers at the end of the middle stage, for which provision should be made by alternative courses in that stage. The students should be encouraged to offer these courses as they would be of great help in practical life. Number 2. Improvement in the training and service condition of secondary teachers. In this regard, the committee said, teachers should be provided with better service conditions, high salary, and better social status. Remuneration and condition of service of the secondary teachers are far from satisfactory. Therefore, the salaries and service condition of the teachers should be improved so as to attract really capable persons into the job. The committee noted that there was no security of service for teachers. Teachers were frequently sent away at short notice. Many schools recruit teachers for 9 months only, thus avoiding the payment of the vacations and the increments falling due. The salaries of the teachers are paid very irregularly. The committee recommended the removal of such evils for the improvement of secondary education. The training facilities of the teacher should also be improved. Recommendations on higher education. First, we shall discuss the defects of higher education as pointed out by the committee, and then we shall proceed to the recommendations regarding its improvement. Defects pointed out by the committee are as: Number 1. Low standards. The committee praised the growth in the number of affiliated colleges, but regretted the falling standards of education due to the worsening of environment in these colleges. The committee also stated that the lowering of standards is also due to the indiscriminate admissions and poor work culture in secondary schools. Number 2. Failure to achieve purpose. The main aim of higher education is to inculcate the taste for learning in the students and to prepare the right type of persons for the society. But the universities have failed to produce leaders of society from the qualitative and quantitative points of view. Number 3. Overcrowding. The universities are overcrowded with students who are not exactly fit for university education. Number 4. Neglect of honors courses. The university have not properly organized the honors courses. This leads to an unbalanced growth in the field of education. Number 5. Inadequate libraries and laboratories. Libraries are ill-equipped. Laboratory equipment and teaching aids are unsatisfactory, which are so essential for higher education, are not up to the mark. Number 6. Unhealthy competitions. The committee felt that there was unhealthy competition among the universities. They paid more attention to increasing the number of students than to raising the standard of education. The recommendation made by the committee in order to remove the defects of the higher education are as: Number 1. unitary as well as teaching universities. The committee recommended the establishment of affiliated universities along with the unitary, residential and teaching universities, keeping in view the great demand for higher education in India. It admitted that the standard of education in the affiliated colleges of these universities would be poorer than in the teaching universities. But under the circumstances, affiliated colleges alone could meet the demand for higher education of the people. Number 2, appointment of teachers. The committee recommended that the teachers for affiliated colleges should be appointed by the universities. This procedure will raise the standard of education. Number 3, provision for honors courses. The honors courses should be of more advanced in nature than the pass courses, and these courses should be instituted only at the universities. Number 4, employment. Provision should be made for technical education by the universities. Graduates should not suffer from unemployment, and employment bureau should be opened in universities to help the students get suitable employment. Number 5, improving the standard of higher education. In order to improve the standard of higher education, the standard of secondary examination should be raised. Number 6, restricted admission. The admissions in the universities should be made on the basis of the abilities and aptitudes of the students. Number 7, libraries. There should be a well-equipped central library in each university in order to enable the teachers to keep themselves up to date in the field of education. Number 8, examination for administrative service. Departmental examination should be held to recruit the graduates in administrative services. Recommendations on women education. The Hartog committee observed that vast discrepancy exists between the education of boys and that of girls. The condition of women education was deplorable. The recommendations made by the committee for women education are as: Number 1, more primary schools for the girls should be established in rural areas where convenient. Girls should also be allowed to study in the schools meant for boys. Number 2, equal importance should be given to the education of the boys as well as girls. Number 3, education of the girls at the primary level should be gradually made compulsory. Number 4, priority should be given to the education of women in India. Number 5, the number of inspecting staff should also be raised. Number 6, curriculum for girls should include home science, hygiene, music, etc. in secondary schools. Number 7, greater attention should be paid towards the training for women so that the sufficient number of trained female teachers could take up the teaching job. We have discussed the recommendations of the Hartog committee in different spheres of education. Now we will evaluate these recommendations in the field of Indian education. The report of the Hartog committee holds a unique position in the history of Indian education. The recommendations of the committee regarding primary education were important and well thought out. The report was the first official recognition of the neglect of the primary education. It pointed out that the problems of primary education were basically rural, and it had also drawn attention to the problems of wastage and stagnation. Regarding secondary education, the Hartog committee laid emphasis on industrial and commercial subjects, thereby making provisions for the students to make up practical occupations in life. The committee very distinctly remarked qualitative improvement of education was not possible unless the conditions of the teachers were improved. The committee praised the growth of affiliated colleges but criticized the falling standard of university. We know that the essence of Hartog committee was the qualitative improvement of primary education and not on the quantitative expansion. People wanted an educational policy which could lead to the increase in the rate of the literacy. In fact, increase in literacy was the need of the country. Due to the growth of the secondary education, higher education also developed. The number of new universities and colleges were opened during this period. University-educated persons were getting preference over the matriculation passed individuals. Therefore, there was a rush towards higher education. But the report of the Hartog Committee received cold and hostile reception in the nationalistic circles because they felt that a definite program of expansion was urgently needed for the liquidation of illiteracy and mass education in the country. It was criticized as a political device to check the expansion of mass education. Dear learners, with this we conclude this very important topic of today. Hope you enjoyed the lesson. Now it's time to say goodbye. Stay blessed.